Chapter 1225. He didn't lower his voice, and his loud voice attracted a lot of attention. Obviously, they were also very curious about this question. Chu Luiyue smiled faintly. The Azure Cloud leaderboard is filled with heroes. I'm just a new student, what can I use to compete? Zhuosheng clicked his tongue. I haven't seen you for a few days, but you're much more humble than before. Actually, Chu Luiyue wasn't too arrogant after coming to Lingxiao College. Otherwise, she wouldn't have only applied for the celestial physician position. However, she would always inexplicably bump into many things, causing her to become famous in the short span of 2 months. She had become a celebrity in the entire academy. Seeing Chu Luiyue's expression, Luo Shishir was a little surprised. Chu Yu, are you really not going to try? Because of his relationship with Senior Rong Xiu, many people in the college were actually suspicious of him. There were also many people who secretly mocked him. And the examination at the beginning of the month was undoubtedly the best opportunity for Chu Yu to prove his strength. But looking at him, he didn't seem to care. Chu Luiyue paused. It depends. She couldn't really not go for the examination, that would only attract more attention. But based on yesterday's situation, as long as she got close, she would definitely summon the Azure Cloud leaderboard. She had to think of a way to hide it. The examination went on as usual. The entire Qingming Square was very lively. Chu Luiyue walked to the celestial physician position and waited quietly. There weren't many people here, so Chu Luiyue's presence was very conspicuous. Some people would occasionally look in her direction. Chu Luiyue turned a deaf ear to them. At this moment, Elder Bo Yen finally waved his sleeve and summoned the Azure Cloud leaderboard. Wang! The tyrannical wave came. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat, and she looked up. The crowd was quiet for a moment, and then they all looked up. Some were nervous, some were looking forward to it, and more were full of battle intent and eager to try. The examination at the beginning of the month officially begins. Elder Bo Yen gave the order. Everyone quickly got busy. However, Chu Luiyue didn't move. He only raised his head slightly and looked at the ascension rankings. Hundreds of names were neatly arranged on the black wall, emitting a lustrous glow. It was divine and powerful, and it carried a tyrannical pressure that could not be ignored. She looked at the top. That place was still covered in darkness. Almost no one knew that her name was hidden under the seal. Chu Luiyue slowly clenched his fists in his sleeves. This time, compared to the first time they met 2 months ago, his state of mind was completely different. Chu Yu, what are you looking at? Zhong Sun walked over and stood beside Chu Luiyue, following her line of sight. A look of understanding appeared in his eyes as he smiled. You still want to be on the list, right? He had overheard the conversation between Chu Luiyue and Luo Shishir. Just as he had said, this teenage boy was the most hot-blooded of all. Even if he said that he didn't dare or didn't want to, there was still an unconcealable desire in his heart. Chu Luiyue smiled and didn't say anything. At this moment, a cry of surprise suddenly came from the side. Chu Luiyue and Zhong Sun both turned to look. It seems like someone won the Xian Master competition. Zhong Sun muttered. Chu Luiyue looked at the familiar face behind the crowd and narrowed his eyes. Lin Qifei. At this moment he was standing in a competition venue with a pale face and a forehead full of sweat. The young man opposite him was sitting on the ground, spitting out blood and looking dispirited. There was a chessboard between the two of them. She didn't need to look to know that this was a match between Xian masters, and the winner was Lin Qifei. Everyone was also shocked by this unexpected outcome and discussed animatedly. He won. He actually won? The other party is a famous figure on the Ascension rankings. Doesn't this mean that he replaced him and ascended the Ascension rankings? I remember that he's only ranked 98th on the Xian Master ranking. There are still many people competing for this ranking. Isn't it normal for someone to win? You don't know about this. The one who just won the competition is called Lin Qifei. He's only been in the academy for 2 months and is a true freshman. Freshman? Really? There aren't many people who can ascend the Ascension rankings after such a short time in the academy. I've never heard of this Lin Qifei before, but I didn't expect him to be so powerful. Lin Qifei didn't seem to care about the surrounding voices and cupped his hands at the other party. Thank you for going easy on me, senior brother. The young man's face was red and white, and he was extremely embarrassed. Going easy on me? I went all out. I didn't give in at all. In this battle, he had lost completely. He forced himself to stand up. Junior brother, you don't have to be humble. I'm inferior. With that, his face burned even more, and he quickly turned to leave. An elder in charge of supervising the assessment chuckled. You're Lin Qifei, right? You're indeed young and promising. Congratulations. With that, he waved his sleeve, and the young man's name on the ascension rankings gradually disappeared and was replaced by Lin Qifei's name. Lin Qifei heaved a sigh of relief when he saw his name. He cupped his hands at the elder and smiled. Thank you, elder. Why are you thanking me? If you want to thank someone, you should thank yourself. It's because you're outstanding enough that you can ascend the ascension rankings in such a short time. That elder clearly admired Lin Qifei and patted him on the shoulder. Continue to cultivate well in the future. Strive to reach a higher level. Lin Qifei responded respectfully. He was neither servile nor overbearing. His humble and reserved manner won the praises of many of the elders beside him. They had seen countless people and had sharp eyes. Lin Qifei was extremely talented. Even in the entire academy, he was definitely one of the best. Most importantly, his personality was also good. He was calm and not arrogant. As long as everything went smoothly, his future would definitely be bright. Lin Qifei left the arena. Many people in the surroundings looked at him with envy. There aren't many people who can ascend the ascension rankings within 3 months of entering the academy, right? I don't know about anything else. I only know that he's the first person to make it onto the rankings among the new students. I've always said that Chuyu was the strongest among the new students. Looking at it now, that might not be the case. I think this Lin Qifei is better. In addition, Luo Yanlin's sister, Luo Shishir, is also extremely talented. I think it won't be long before she can ascend the rankings as well. Isn't she much better than that Chuyu? I'd like to see if that Chuyu can ascend the rankings today. All sorts of voices filled the entire arena. Qifei, you're good. As soon as Lin Qifei came down, a strong man came over from the side. I already said that you would amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Sure enough, that Chuyu can't be compared to you at all. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 12:26. Lin Qifei smiled faintly. His clear eyes were calm, and he looked as aloof as ever. Senior brother is too kind. I'm a mystic cultivator, and he's a celestial physician. There's nothing to compare. He didn't really care about this matter. I just think that kid is too good at bluffing. He's only been in the academy for 2 months, but almost everyone knows about him. Many people say that he's the most outstanding one among the new students, but I don't think so. Just now, I heard quite a few people from the Celestial Physician's side say that Chuyu doesn't seem to have the heart to compete for the Azure Sky role this time. Most likely, he knows that he's not qualified. He might as well give up. Lin Qifei shook his head. If he really is someone who doesn't live up to his reputation, then holy sun. Senior brother Rong Xiu probably wouldn't think so highly of him. Although he didn't have much interaction with Rong Xiu, he had seen that man's grace and bearing at the birthday banquet. To be able to catch Rong Xiu's eye, that Chuyu definitely wasn't someone to be trifled with. I forgot that you're also a member of the tribe under the Yuntian Tower. That youth shrugged and didn't say anything else. However, he still disapproved of Lin Qifei's words. He only thought that Lin Qifei was worried about offending Rong Xiu, so he said that on purpose. Lin Qifei knew that he had misunderstood. His lips moved, but he didn't explain anything in the end. His personality had always been like this. As long as he did his own thing well, he couldn't be bothered to care so much. When he thought of this, he raised his eyes and glanced at the Celestial Physician's side. There was quite a distance between them, and there were quite a few heads in the middle. He couldn't see much from where he stood, and he could barely make out a tall and slender figure. Even though he could only see half of the person's face, That extraordinary aura made him stand out like a crane in a flock of chickens. It immediately attracted people's attention. That youth stood alone, upright and clean. He raised his head slightly, as if he was looking at the azure sky roll, but also as if he was deep in thought. Lin Qifei took a few glances and retracted his gaze. A faint trace of doubt flashed across his eyes. That person said that she wanted to come to Lingxiao College, but he hadn't seen her until now. He didn't know if she would come or not. The news of Lin Qifei's appearance on the azure sky roll had caused quite a commotion. Many people looked at him curiously after hearing the news. Many of them wanted to see who was the most among the newly recruited students to see. Who was the most of them? Now, Lin Qifei was the first one on the list. If Chu Yu couldn't go up, he would inevitably lose some face. And Lu was at to the two. Elder Wanzheng looked at him with a smile. Chu Yu, who do you want to challenge? He was asking about the celestial physician on the azure sky roll. In Elder Wanzheng's opinion, his disciple was already a 9th-grade celestial physician. Although she couldn't be compared to those at the top of the roll, it wasn't a problem for her to challenge those at the bottom. If it was any other student who had just broken through to become a 9th-grade celestial physician, Elder Wanzheng wouldn't be so confident. But this person was Chu Luiyue. Everything seemed to be possible, because her alchemy skills were very smooth and skillful. Although she had just broken through to become a 9th-grade celestial physician, she wasn't bad at all. Therefore, Elder Wanzheng was excited. He was waiting to see his disciple get on the azure sky roll. However, Chu Luiyue's answer surprised him. Master, do I have to choose? Elder Wanzheng was stunned. Why, you don't want to? Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. Based on my current strength, I'm afraid I might not win. So, why don't we wait a little longer? Elder Wanzheng opened his mouth in shock. What was going on? Chu Yu really didn't want to challenge the azure sky roll? But he had already broken through to become a 9th-grade celestial physician. Moreover, with his talent and spirit energy in this area, he might have a chance to win. But now, you've thought it through? Elder Wanzheng was still in disbelief. In the academy, the azure sky roll was the belief of countless students. They studied and cultivated diligently just so that they could occupy a place in this world. It was fine if they were weaker, but Chu Yu obviously had a chance to do it. Why did he reject it? This is a rare opportunity. Elder Wanzheng glanced at the other elders who were standing not too far away, and he looked a little troubled. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. She suddenly remembered what Elder Bo Yen said yesterday. Elder Wanzheng had already spread the news that she had broken through to become a 9th-grade celestial physician. As if to confirm her guess, Elder Wanzheng coughed and lowered his voice. Disciple, it's not that I want to make things difficult for you, but I've already made a bet with them. Even if you don't have the confidence to win, why don't you give it a try? Even if I lose, it's not a bad idea to show those old fogies that Chu Yu has broken through to the 9th grade. Why would he give up just like that? I'll definitely be mocked when I go back. Chu Luiyue was speechless. Disciple, have you forgotten the promise you made with me? Elder Wanzheng looked at Chu Luiyue with a pleading look. They had made a promise to get on the azure sky roll as soon as possible. Chu Luiyue was silent for a moment. It was indeed a great temptation to have all the herbs she wanted. All right. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1227. Hearing Chu Luiyue's answer, Elder Wanzheng was delighted. Which one do you want to challenge? The last batch on the Celestial Physician list are all 9th grade Celestial Physicians. In other words, Chu Luiyue could challenge anyone. Chu Luiyue looked up. I want to challenge senior brother Tang Rui. Tang Rui? Elder Wanzheng followed her gaze and looked over. Yes, the 100th on the Celestial Physician list. Why did this child become more cautious after a few days? Elder Wanzheng stroked his beard. Could it be that she was traumatized by being locked in Min Mountain some time ago? Are you sure it's him? Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Seeing that she had made up her mind, Elder Wanzheng agreed. So what if I'm ranked 100? Anyway, this was the first time. It was good to have a good start. Tang Rui. Elder Wanzheng looked at a young man in the crowd. He looked a little over 20 years old. He was not tall and had a round body. His face was as white and round as dough. With a smile on his face, he looked very amiable. Greetings, Elder Wanzheng. He was standing at the side, so he naturally heard the master-disciple duo's words clearly. He knew that he had become Chu Liyue's challenge target. Tang Rui, give Chuyu some advice. Elder Wanzheng said. Tang Rui nodded and said with a smile. After that, he looked at Chu Liyue and smiled even more politely. Junior brother Chuyu, please. Chu Liyue raised her hand. Senior brother Tang Rui, please. Jianghu Mountain. Halfway up the mountain, Rong Xiu stood in front of the door with his hands behind his back. He looked in the direction of the Donghuang Bell Tower. Although he couldn't see the situation in the Qingming Square from here, he could see the master roll because the Donghuang Bell Tower was tall enough. She went to take the test? A young and childish voice came from inside the room. Although childish, it had its own dignity. It was not to be underestimated. Rong Xiu nodded. As long as she's in the academy, she can't avoid this. Her reputation in the academy had spread, and her every move would be watched. It would be strange if she didn't go to the master role. Dugu Mabao snorted. According to her current strength, wanting to break through that layer of restriction and let her name see the light of day again is simply wishful thinking. But it's her name is her name and her power. Rong Xiu smiled lightly, turned around, and looked into the house. If you're worried, why don't you do it yourself? Ma Bao snorted. Didn't you already make preparations for the ascension rankings? Is there even a need for me? Rong Xiu smiled noncommittally. It's what I should do. He was to love. It's she. Qingming Square was divided into many small areas as the competition venue. Chu Liyue and Tang Rui were standing in one of the areas. There were not many people at the celestial physician's side, and it was always very spacious. But at this moment, there were many people around the two of them. Other than the celestial physician students, many mystic masters and martial artists also ran over. Chu Liyue rubbed her temples as her head hurt. It seemed that she was really famous in Lingxiao College. Junior brother Chuyu, please. Tang Rui took out the cauldron. Chu Liyue followed closely behind. The surroundings quieted down. The two of them took out the herbs and put them into the cauldron to refine. Tang Rui had seen Chu Liyue refining pills before and knew that she wasn't weak, so he didn't dare to underestimate her. From the very beginning, he had put forth 120% of his energy. Chu Liyue didn't think so much and just started refining pills in an orderly manner. Although she could successfully refine a 9th grade pill with her current strength, she still needed to put in a lot of effort to win this competition. She waved her wrist and put the herbs into the cauldron one by one. Red flames burned fiercely. The unique bitter fragrance of the herbs gradually spread. After watching for a while, Elder Wanzheng exclaimed in surprise, this kid didn't seem to be refining the previous pill. If he guessed correctly, he seemed to be planning to refine the essence-strengthening pill? Although this essence-strengthening pill was also a 9th grade inferior pill, it was better than the previous one in all aspects. Of course, the corresponding requirements were also much higher. This was one of the prescriptions that Elder Wanzheng gave Chu Liyue a few days ago. This kid is too reckless, Elder Wanzheng couldn't help but murmur. Chu Yu hadn't been in possession of this prescription for long. He might not have fully understood it, but he took it out for the competition. Whether or not he could refine it was still a question, but the competition had already begun, and the bystanders could only wait and see. It wasn't Chu Liyue's first time refining the essence-strengthening pill. When she had just broken through to become a 9th grade celestial physician in her previous life, the first pill she refined was the essence-strengthening pill. So, this was one of the pills she was most familiar with. When Elder Wanzheng tested her before, she didn't choose this because she didn't want to expose too much. And the prescription of the essence-strengthening pill was among the things he sent a few days ago. Now, it was logical for her to refine it again. The prescription had been deeply engraved in her mind. The order of putting in each herb, as well as the strength and time needed to refine it, she could perform it perfectly without even thinking. Her movements were smooth and beautiful. Tang Rui inadvertently raised his head and glanced over, and his heart immediately tightened. This kind of technique, this kind of ease, how did it look like a celestial physician who had just broken through to become a 9th-grade celestial physician? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 12:28. Many of the onlookers were also shocked. Although the news of Chu Luiyue fusing pills had spread throughout the academy, she was only an 8th-grade celestial physician at that time. But now, the strength she displayed was clearly that of a 9th-grade martial artist. After a short silence, the crowd became noisy. Is this Chu Yu really a 9th-grade celestial physician? I've been breaking through for a year, but my technique isn't as smooth as his. And his control of the fire is also very accurate. How did he refine so many herbs at the same time? After all, he's someone who caught Elder Wan Zheng's eye. How can his talent be bad? No matter how unpleasant the words of others were, Chu Yu didn't care at all and shook them off in minutes. A while ago, when he competed with Lu Zian, he was indeed an 8th-grade celestial physician. In such a short time, not only did he break through to 9th grade, but his strength in all aspects has increased so much. Sigh, if only I had half of his talent. The students who were also celestial physicians saw it the clearest. The spiritual energy that Chu Luiyue displayed was indeed incomparable to that of an ordinary person. They had no choice but to admit defeat. With senior brother Rong Xiu's personal guidance, it's naturally different. Someone said ambiguously, but this voice was quickly drowned out by the discussion of the crowd. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Chu Luiyue was indeed capable. There was no doubt that he was a 9th-grade celestial physician, and it was very likely that the pills he refined were also quite good. Even if he lost in the end, there wouldn't be so many doubts. Time passed slowly. The martial artist and Xian master assessments were also carried out in an orderly manner. Luo Shishir and Zhuo Sheng passed smoothly, especially Luo Shishir, who improved rapidly and had already broken through to the middle of 9th grade. Although Luo Yanming's performance was not bad, there was already Lin Qifei in front of her, which instantly dimmed the light of the others. Even Luo Yanlin had to admit that this newcomer, Lin Qifei, was indeed shockingly talented. Compared to others, he was not inferior. After the assessment, Luo Shishir and the others also went to the celestial physician's side to watch the match between Chu Luiyue and Tang Rui. The atmosphere became more and more tense. Everyone quieted down as they silently watched the scene before them. It was as if their hearts were being hung up. A ripple came out from Tang Rui's medicinal cauldron. Many people's eyes lit up. Tang Rui was the first to form the pill. Within the medicinal cauldron, a round medicinal pill had already condensed. Following the roasting of the flames, the medicinal fragrance also became more and more intense. Sensing this movement, Chu Luiyue's eyebrows twitched slightly. He raised his head to take a look, and a glimmer of light flashed through his eyes. This aura, middle 9th grade. Suddenly, an exclamation came from the crowd. That's a level 9 mid-grade medicinal pill. Everyone was in an uproar. Tang Rui had been hanging at the 100th place on the Azure Cloud roll for some time, and his alchemy level had basically remained at the same level. Unexpectedly, he was already able to refine a level 9 mid-grade medicinal pill. Just relying on this alone was enough to make his ranking continue to move up a lot. He's hiding his strength. Someone suddenly sighed with understanding. I really didn't expect that Tang Rui, who usually looks so amiable, had already broken through in secret. When Tang Rui heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was indeed able to refine a level 9 mid-grade medicinal pill long ago, but for various reasons he had never revealed it to the public. Even on the Azure Cloud roll, he only let himself hang at the 100th place and didn't continue to move up. Originally, he wanted to wait until he could refine a level 9 mid-grade medicinal pill or a higher level medicinal pill before officially challenging it. He didn't expect to be chosen by Chu Luiyue to participate in such a competition. In fact, if he hadn't seen Chu Liyue's skillful alchemy technique just now, he didn't intend to reveal his true strength. But now, in order to stabilize his ranking, he had to go all out. Chu Yu will definitely lose this time. Although the level 9 mid-grade medicinal pill is only a small level higher than the level 9 mid-grade medicinal pill, there's a huge gap between the two. To cross it is extremely difficult. Looking at Tang Rui's skillful appearance, he should have broken through for a while, but that Chu Yu seems to have just ascended the level 9 celestial physician steps not long ago. What's there to compare? Isn't this bullying? Ha! Don't forget one thing, to be able to make Tang Rui show his true strength, it means that the opponent is enough to make him vigilant. And this person, this Chu Yu, that was only a 16-year-old youth. For a moment, the way everyone looked at Chu Liyue changed again. After Elder Wan Zheng was surprised, he was relieved. Tang Rui's strength was stronger than before, and the winner of this competition was probably already decided. After all, Chu Yu was refining a level 9 mid-grade medicinal pill. However, as long as his disciple could successfully refine a level 9 medicinal pill, nothing else mattered. He thought silently in his heart. Disciple, don't let me down. At this moment, Chu Liyue suddenly stopped moving, took out a few medicinal herbs from the universe ring, and put them in the medicinal cauldron one by one. What's that? Elder Wan Zheng was stunned for a moment, and subconsciously moved forward to take a look. But with a hurried glance, he could barely recognize that those seemed to be medicinal herbs. But why did Chu Yu suddenly put these things in? In the prescription, he didn't write these herbs. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1229. Based on his understanding of Chu Yu, this was definitely not a mistake in remembering the prescription or putting in the wrong herbs. The only explanation was that Chu Yu had changed the prescription himself. What was this kid thinking? Elder Wan Zheng could not help but grind his teeth. Prescriptions of this level were all extremely complicated. Even if the dosage of one of the herbs was changed, it could lead to the failure of refining the pill, let alone changing the prescription and adding in several herbs. His lips trembled, and he swallowed the words in his throat with great difficulty. Now he could only wait and see. Not only Elder Wan Zheng, but many other celestial physicians present also noticed that something was wrong. Chu Yu is planning to refine the energy cultivation pill, right? But why did he put in the green lotus seed just now? Not only that, the 4 herbs he put in just now were not in the prescription. I really don't know what he's trying to do. With Elder Wan Zheng and Senior Rong Xiu's personal guidance, logically speaking, he shouldn't have made such a low-level mistake, right? Look at his calm expression. It's obvious that he did it on purpose. Many people were puzzled. Regardless of their level, they all understood that the prescription could not be changed at will, let alone in such a tense battle. This Chu Yu's guts were truly abnormally big. Some people secretly shook their heads. The herbs used in the energy cultivation pill are extremely mild. When a cultivator takes it, it can strengthen their foundation, stabilize their mind, and benefit their qi. But the herbs that Chu Yu put in just now were extremely strong. Isn't this clearly going to destroy the pill? I think there's no point in continuing this competition. Unfortunately, I thought that his performance was good just now. But changing the prescription at the last minute is really a big mistake. Some people were whispering. Obviously, they had already lost hope in Chu Liyue. Hearing those words, Luo Shishir's heart hung in the air. Although she was not a celestial physician, she knew such common knowledge. As a 9th-grade celestial physician, Chu Yu definitely knew this, but why did he do it? Zhuoxing shook his head regretfully. I think Chu Yu is going to lose this round. Luo Shishir pursed her lips. Perhaps he has his own ideas. He has just become a 9th-grade celestial physician. How can he change prescriptions at will? Although Zhuoxing had always felt that Chu Yu was extremely talented, prescriptions were the foundation of a celestial physician's alchemy. Luo Shishir was silent for a moment and looked at the young man on the field. He stood tall and straight with one hand on top of the cauldron, controlling the temperature of the crimson flame inside. His other hand was still continuously putting in the remaining medicinal herbs. He looked calm and composed. "I don't think he changed the prescription all of a sudden," Luo Shishir murmured. Looking at Chu Yu's smooth and natural appearance, it was as if he should have placed those medicinal herbs in. Zhuosheng shrugged. That group of celestial physician already said that he was refining the energy pill. There were many people who knew about this prescription, and they all said that Chu Yu had changed the prescription himself. Were they all wrong? Luo Shishir did not say anything else. Seeing her expression, Zhuosheng's heart moved. He knew that she was worried about Chu Yu, so he comforted her. "Sai, you don't have to be too worried. After all, this is only the first round, and the opponent is a senior on the Azure Sky roll. Even if he loses, it won't be a big deal. After all, everyone can see that he is indeed a 9th-grade celestial physician." Luo Shishir wanted to say something but stopped. Although she said that, there were many people in the academy who were waiting to see Chu Yu make a fool of himself. If he really lost, then not only would he be ridiculed, but he would also implicate Senior Rong Xiu and Elder Wan Zheng. Would Chu Yu really not care about winning or losing this round? No matter what the others said, Chu Luiwei did not take it to heart. The reason why she put in so many herbs was actually because she was following her own prescription. Yes, she had previously improved the prescription of the energy pill. Celestial Physician had perfected the prescription of every pill after countless attempts. The amount of each medicinal herb, the method of extraction, the control of the flame, and even the order in which it was put in had strict requirements. Once one made a mistake, it could lead to the failure of refining the pill. Of course, Chu Luiwei would not joke about such things. She waved her wrist lightly and finally put in the last medicinal herb for extraction. After all the medicinal herbs were prepared, it was time to form the pill. Chu Luiwei took a deep breath and urged the force in her body to surge out crazily. Boom! The flames in the cauldron suddenly rose. All the medicinal herbs were gathered together. The medicinal herbs he put in are too strong, and it is extremely difficult to merge with the other medicinal herbs. This time, I'm afraid he won't even be able to form the pill. A low murmur of discussion came from the crowd. Some people were already bored and turned to leave. However, at this moment, a violent collision sound suddenly came from Chu Luiwei's cauldron. The sound was loud and heavy, and it spread far and wide. Many people's expressions changed. Was this about to succeed? Sure enough, in the next moment, they saw a perfectly round pill appear in the red flames. A rich medicinal fragrance spread out. Elder Wanjing took a deep breath, and his eyes lit up. This aura. It was indeed the aura of a successfully refined origin-enhancing pill. Moreover, there was a different fragrance faintly hidden in it, which made the entire origin-enhancing pills smell even more fragrant. In an instant, the fragrance entered the lungs, and the whole body felt comfortable. His whole person seemed to be much more energetic. Elder Wanzheng looked at Chu Luiwei with shining eyes. The medicinal herbs that he put in just now had clearly merged perfectly. Moreover, if he guessed correctly, the grade of this origin-enhancing pill was bang. Tang Rui's pill was finally refined. He leaped up and grabbed the medicinal pill back. Put it into the jade box. Almost at the same time, Chu Luiwei also slammed her hand on the cauldron. Pill flew out. She waved her hand, and a red force flew out. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a giant net, blocking the medicinal pill. Her feet moved slightly, and she also quickly kept the pill. The two of them, one in front and one behind, finished refining the pill. Tang Rui frowned slightly. Although he had successfully refined a 9th-grade pill, he didn't know why, but when he saw the calm expression of the young man opposite him, he faintly felt a trace of uneasiness in his heart. Even if he hadn't seen Chu Yu's pill with his own eyes, he knew that it was definitely not simple. To be able to successfully refine the pill after changing the prescription, it was already enough to explain too many problems. He hesitated for a moment, but still took the lead and handed over his pill. Elder Wanzheng, please take a look. Elder Wanzheng took his pill, and then looked at Chu Luiwei with a trace of excitement in his eyes. Chu Yu, yours? Chu Liuyue's fingers moved slightly, and she still handed over the item. Elder Wan Zheng's hands each had a jade box. He held his breath and opened Tang Rui's first. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 12:30. A reddish-brown pill lay quietly in it. 9 lines, bright and dazzling, were coiled on it. Only the last line was slightly dimmer. It was indeed a 9th-grade pill. Elder Wan Jing nodded and smiled. Tang Rui, you should have broken through for a while, right? You hit it well. Looking at the quality of this pill, it was definitely not something that could be refined for the first time. Tang Rui smiled a little embarrassedly. His white dough-like face seemed even rounder. Elder Wan Zheng has good eyesight. I can't hide anything from you. Elder Wan Zheng nodded, suppressed the excitement in his heart, and opened Chu Liuyue's jade box. On the bright red pill, 9 lines could be seen clearly. Elder Wan Zheng looked at the 9th line, and his breathing stagnated. This was also a 9th-grade pill. Although he had expected this result, Elder Wan Zheng was still extremely shocked when he saw it for himself. Not long ago, Chu Yu had refined his first grade 9 medicinal pill under his watch. And now, this kid could actually successfully refine a 9th-grade pill? There seemed to be a river rushing in his chest, as if it would rush out in the next moment. Even if he was used to all kinds of big scenes, he still couldn't control his excitement at this time. Tang Rui also saw the pill in the jade box. He couldn't help but be stunned, and then smiled bitterly. Junior brother Chu Yu's talent is really amazing, and his strength is superb. I heard that when you first came to the academy, you were only an 8th-grade celestial physician. It's only been 2 months, and you can already refine a 9th-grade pill. He sighed and cupped his hands at Chu Liyue. I am ashamed of my inferiority. Tang Rui's words spread in the square. Some of the noise disappeared in an instant. Almost everyone was stunned on the spot and couldn't react for a while. What did Tang Rui say? Chu Yu also refined a 9th-grade pill? How was this possible? Chu Yu even changed the prescription. How could he successfully refine the energy cultivation pill and raise it by a grade? Chu Liyue smiled. Senior brother Tang Rui, you flatter me. I was just a little bit lucky. Tang Rui shook his head and smiled helplessly. Luck was the last thing a celestial physician needed when concocting pills. He had never heard of anyone who relied on luck to successfully refine a 9th-grade medicinal pill. To be able to do this, it proved that Chu Yu had real talent and strength. Junior brother, you're too modest. Tang Rui sighed. Previously, he had also heard many rumors about Chu Yu, and like many others, he even felt that Chu Yu did not have any strength at all, and it was only by chance that he had so many fortuitous encounters. But after today's match, he finally understood that those rumors were true. Thinking about it, what kind of people were Elder Wan Zheng and Rong Xiu? Those who could catch their eyes were naturally not mediocre people. Elder Wan Zheng took a deep breath and looked at Chu Liyue. His eyes were filled with admiration and surprise. Middle 9th grade. He reached out and patted Chu Liyue on the shoulder. Chu Yu, very good. Originally, he only wanted to let those people see how outstanding his disciple was. But he did not expect that Chu Yu's performance was actually so outstanding. It was many times better than what he had expected. He carefully looked at the 2 medicinal pills again, and then frowned slightly. His expression seemed to be somewhat conflicted. The 2 of you have refined pills of the same grade, and the quality is equally matched. This match is considered a draw. Everyone was in an uproar. A draw? Didn't that prove that Chu Yu did indeed have the strength to ascend the Azure Sky rankings? But Tang Rui was ranked 100. Between the 2 of them, only one could ascend. Of course, according to the strength that they had displayed, they should be able to be ranked at the front. But then, they would have to continue to challenge higher ranks. Tang Rui suddenly cupped his hands towards Chu Liyue and chuckled. This Azure Sky rankings should have been ascended by junior brother Chu Yu. Although I refined pills of the same grade as junior brother Chu Yu is only 16 years old. Just this point alone has already surpassed me by too much. Everyone had different expressions, but no one refuted. Because this was one of the rules of the ascension rankings. If the two of them were of equal strength, then the younger one would be ranked at the front. Chu Yu had sufficient confidence to ascend the Azure Sky rankings. Elder Wanjing actually didn't care much about whether Chu Luiyue could ascend the Azure Sky rankings or not. In any case, everything that he had displayed was enough to prove his excellence. This was already enough. He thought in his heart. Actually, from the beginning he shouldn't have treated ascending the Azure Sky rankings as the goal of testing Chu Yu. With this child's natural talent, he should strive for a better ranking. Elder Wanjing glanced at Tang Rui with admiration in his eyes. Tang Rui, although you will fall out of the Azure Sky rankings after this match. But with your current strength, you can definitely continue to challenge those on it. Tang Rui nodded respectfully. This student understands. Elder Wanjing looked at Chu Luiyue and raised his chin with a smile. Kigo, place your hand on the Azure Sky rankings and inject a strand of origin power. Your name will appear. Chu Luiyue's fingers curled. The Azure Sky rankings, what's wrong? Seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't move for a long time, Elder Wanjing couldn't help but ask. Chu Luiyue shook his head and finally walked toward the Celestial Physician rankings. Countless gazes fell on her. Envy, jealousy, admiration, surprise, Chu Luiyue ignored them all. She stood still one step away from the Celestial Physician rankings. As long as she stretched out her hand and let her name appear, she would ascend the Azure Sky rankings. But would her name really appear? Chu Luiyue held his breath and finally raised his hand. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1231. Her white palm slowly approached and finally touched the black wall. Black and white, the two extreme colors contrasted against each other, and the names on the wall sparkled with light, almost forming a painting. Quiet and brilliant. Solemn and majestic. A cold touch came from her palm. Chu Luiyue's blood seemed to be boiling, flowing quickly in her limbs and bones. Her heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something. Everyone felt that she should be proud, joyful, and full of glory at this moment. But in reality, she was so nervous that she couldn't even hear the sounds around her. All she saw and heard was the honor roll of green clouds in front of her. Yesterday she also stood here. That familiar fluctuation seemed to still be surging in her heart. She carefully moved a strand of force and injected it into the honor roll of green clouds. Buzz. A faint buzzing sound suddenly entered her ears. Chu Luiyue's heart jumped. She almost wanted to withdraw her hand. But in the next moment, that sound quickly disappeared, as if it had never appeared. Chu Luiyue was stunned. She quietly waited for a while, and that sound indeed didn't sound again, and even the fluctuation that should have appeared didn't appear. Then, a ray of light appeared in her palm and rushed upwards. She immediately looked up. That ray of light stopped at the last name on the honor roll of green clouds. Then, the name, Tang, quietly disappeared. Her name replaced it. When she saw the words clearly, her hanging heart finally settled down. Because that name was Chu Yu. The thing she was most worried about didn't happen, and this made Chu Luiyue's heart calm down. She slightly raised her head and looked at the highest point. There it was still dark. That hidden name didn't appear. Everything looked normal. She lightly exhaled. The surrounding crowd was silent. No matter how much criticism and suspicion they had before, it all disappeared at this moment. There was nothing better to prove a person's strength than winning a competition like this, and officially entering the honor roll of green clouds. Although this matter seemed so unbelievable, but it still happened. On the Donghuang clock tower, Elder Bo Yen stroked his beard and nodded in satisfaction. This Chu Yu is indeed a promising talent. Vaguely, she had some of the vigor of that girl back then. Both of them were equally good at causing trouble, and both of them were full of spirit energy. She also had astonishing talent as a mystic cultivator and martial artist. Seems like Bo Yen, you have high hopes for this Chu Yu. A voice came from behind Elder Bo Yen. Elder Bo Yen turned around and smiled. That's right. You just came back, So you don't know much about him. This kid is very powerful. For Rong Xiu to think so highly of him, he must be quite talented. A middle-aged man walked over, looked down and nodded. It does look good. However, Elder Meng is quite critical of him. Have you been to Pengmin Mountain? Elder Bo Yen asked in shock. Shang Yusen grinned. Do you even need to ask? If Elder Meng finds out that I'm back and didn't go over immediately, I'll be in big trouble. Elder Bo Yen nodded in agreement. That's true. However, you said that Elder Meng is dissatisfied with Chuyu? Could it be that this kid did something out of line when he was locked up in Pengmin Mountain? Shang Yusen stretched out a finger and shook it as a meaningful smile appeared on his face. I just haven't seen anyone who can so easily arouse Elder Meng's emotions, and he can't forget it. That's why I'm curious. To be honest, Elder Meng isn't dissatisfied with Chuyu, but more like curious. Shang Yusen recalled what Elder Meng said before and touched his chin. Even I want to meet this Chuyu personally. He glanced at Elder Bo Yen. He has only been in school for 2 months, and most of the time, he was locked up in Pengmin Mountain. Such a person hasn't appeared for several years, right? He's quite capable. Elder Bo Yen smiled. He's Wan Zheng's precious disciple now, and Wan Zheng loves him very much. Don't mess around. How can that be considered messing around? Many students want to get my guidance but don't have this chance. Shang Yusen didn't care. If he's outstanding enough, it won't be a problem to deal with me. Elder Bo Yen laughed out loud. Shang Yusen suddenly thought of something and asked, Oh right, the divine weapon from Grey Feather's abyss has been brought back, right? Elder Bo Yan's expression became a little strange. Shang Yusen's eyes lit up. Where did you put it? I've been thinking about it for a long time, and now that I've brought it back, you have to let me study it properly. Elder Bo Yen raised his eyebrows. It's no use begging me for this. It's not with me. If it's not with you, then where is it? Shang Yusen was stunned. Such an item, logically speaking, should belong to the dean after it was brought back. But now that the dean wasn't around, Bo Yen was naturally in charge. Elder Bo Yen raised his chin at the youth below. Yes, it's with him. Shang Yusen couldn't help but laugh. Huh? What kind of joke is this? That kid, that thing recognized him as its master. Elder Bo Yen explained leisurely, and was satisfied to see the man's expression change quickly and brilliantly. Shang Yusen closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Good kid. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from LoveNet. Chapter 1232. Elder Bo Yen snickered in his heart. Shang Yusen had been thinking about the divine weapon in Grey Feather's abyss for many years. He had always wanted to bring it back to the academy so that he could study it properly. However, he did not expect that the divine weapon had already recognized him as its master when he came out of seclusion for just a few months. It was not easy to get close to a divine weapon that had recognized its master. Shang Yusen's previous plan was completely ruined. How could he not be angry? However, you don't have to make things difficult for Chuyu because of this. In fact, this was just a coincidence. After that, Elder Bo Yen told Shang Yusen everything that had happened from start to finish. During this time, Shang Yusen's expression kept changing. He wanted to interrupt Elder Bo Yen a few times, but he held himself back in the end. However, it was obvious that this explanation could not make him feel better. After all, he had been thinking about that divine weapon for many years. The moment it appeared, it was taken by a brat in the blink of an eye. It would be strange if he could remain calm. Actually, as a weapon refiner, you should know that this kind of thing depends on one's ability, but it also depends on one's luck. Elder Bo Yen sighed. That divine tool didn't have an artifact soul, and Chuyu just happened to throw out one of his high-grade divine tools. The sword's soul forcefully barged in and turned that thing into hers. The most important thing was that the sword's soul shouldn't have been able to suppress that divine tool, but it still succeeded in the end. This can only mean that the divine weapon chose him. This kind of thing was really something that others could not be envious of. Shang Yusen snorted coldly. Sooner or later, I will go and see what that brat is capable of. At this moment, Chu Luiyue still did not know that someone was thinking about her. Seeing that the name that appeared on the celestial physician list was Chu Yu, her mood instantly lightened up. She stared at the name for a moment before she turned around and walked back to Elder Wanzheng. Master, what you said before still counts, right? Elder Wanzheng could not help but laugh. I knew that you would be thinking about this. Don't worry. Since I have said it, I will not go back on my words. I will definitely do what I promised you. Isn't it just some points and herbs? To be able to cultivate such an outstanding disciple, he couldn't be happier. How could he have the heart to feel distressed? With that, Elder Wanzheng waved his hand. A dazzling stream of light flashed. Chu Luiyue caught it. Taking a closer look, her heart skipped a beat. This was Elder Wanzheng's green jade token. Did he just throw this thing to me? Just as this thought flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind, he heard Elder Wanzheng's heroic shout. As a reward, I'll give you 200,000 points this time. In addition, for the next 3 months, all the medicinal herbs that you take from the Medicine Wind Valley will be charged to your master's account. Chu Luiyue wasn't the only one who was shocked. Even the onlookers were stunned. 200,000 points? Some of them might not even be able to save up that much even if they spent a few years in the academy. Chu Yu actually had it all of a sudden? For the many celestial physician students present, this was not what they envied the most. What they envied the most was actually the 3 months of free use of medicinal herbs from the Medicine Wind Valley. As a celestial physician, medicinal herbs were essential. And as the level increased, the medicinal herbs needed to refine pills would also become more precious. This also caused the cost of their cultivation to increase continuously. Some of them couldn't even afford it. Although they could also earn points by selling pills and so on, it was important to know that not every pill refinement would succeed. Sometimes, it was common to fail dozens or even hundreds of times. And this process would consume a lot of resources. Sometimes, even if they lived frugally, they would still find it hard to make ends meet. And now, Elder Wanzheng gave them 3 months of free use of medicinal herbs. How could they not be envious? Thank you, Master. Chu Luiyue smiled happily, her eyebrows curved. She was really happy. Originally, she thought that 1 month was the limit. Who knew that Elder Wanzheng would be so awesome and give her 3 months? With these 3 months, it would definitely not be a problem for her to break through to the peak of the 9th grade. Elder Wanzheng laughed out loud. Today's competition allowed him to see the huge hidden potential in Chu Luiyue. Under such circumstances, the only thing that a master could do was to guide her patiently and correctly, and try his best to solve all the worries. He couldn't wait to see Chu Yu in 3 months' time. Chu Luiyue put the 2 jade tokens together, and a stream of light flashed quickly. Instantly, a string of zeros appeared on her black jade token. She raised her eyebrows slightly, and a smile appeared on her lips. Fortunately, she didn't reject Tang Rui's request to compete. Otherwise, she would have missed out on too many things. She put away her command medallion and respectfully returned the green jade command medallion. Tang Rui cupped his hands at her. Junior brother Chu Yu, if there's a chance in the future, let's have a good spar. Chu Luiyue also smiled back. Chu Yu will be waiting for senior brother Tang Rui. Only then did Tang Rui turn and leave. He didn't find anyone else to challenge. Instead, he left directly. It seemed that he was planning to compete again next month. Chu Luiyue thought for a while, and then looked at Elder Wanzheng. Master, since the competition here is over, I'd like to go back and continue to cultivate. Elder Wanzheng rubbed his chin. He wanted to ask about the prescription in detail, but seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't seem to want to continue staying here, he swallowed his words. You've worked hard today. Go back and have a good rest. Elder Wanzheng patted her shoulder. It didn't seem appropriate to ask about the prescription in front of so many people. He would ask about it in detail another day when he had time. With Elder Wanzheng's permission, Chu Luiyue bowed and quickly left. Unlike when she came, her steps were lighter now. Everyone thought that it was because she won the competition, so they didn't think too much about it. Now, they only envied Chu Yu for having such a generous elder as her master. Of course, They also knew that Elder Wan Zheng did this because Chu Yu was worth it. Who wouldn't want such a talented disciple? All they could do was watch and feel envious. After Chu Liwei walked down the arena, Luo Shishir and the others quickly went up to congratulate her. Naturally, there were all kinds of praise and exclamations. Chu Liwei knew that the few of them had performed well. Especially Luo Shishir. It wouldn't be long before she could successfully enter the warrior ranking. After they finished congratulating each other, Zhuo Sheng chuckled and asked, Chu Yu is the first one among us to enter the master ranking. We must celebrate. How about we gather at Wine Mountain tonight? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1233. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. That's right, at the beginning of the month, 1000 Wine Mountain must be very lively again. Let's not go. Luo Shishir frowned and looked at Chu Liyue tentatively. Chu Yu seemed to be at odds with 1000 Wine Mountain. Every time he went, he would cause a lot of trouble. What if he got into trouble again? Chu Liyue thought for a moment and said, It's okay to go. After all, there shouldn't be anyone who would deliberately pick on me like the first time. After all, she still had Rong Xiu behind her. Chu Yu, do you really want to go? Luo Shishir was still a little worried. Chu Liyue nodded and smiled. Everyone can go, why can't I? Don't worry, I'll be careful. I don't want to be locked up in Pengmin Mountain again. Of course, she was talking about the recent times. After all, she had been warned when she came out a few days ago. It would be inappropriate for her to turn around and go back. It was better to wait for a while. Hearing her say this, Luo Shishir and the others were relieved. By the way, Chu Yu, you're staying with senior brother Rong Xiu now, so we can't enter Jianghu Mountain. We'll wait for you outside the mountain tonight, okay? Chu Liyue nodded. Chu Liyue returned to Jianghu Mountain and saw Rong Xiu standing with his hands behind his back from afar. She quickly flew over and stood in front of Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu's thin lips curled up slightly. Congratulations. Chu Liyue raised her eyebrows. Did you do something to the Qingyun leaderboard? You can't say that. Rong Xiu smiled. Although that is also your name, the power in your body now is different from back then. I just suppressed the call of that power to you. Of course, when you break through to your previous realm, the seal will naturally be lifted. Chu Liyue blinked. My previous realm. In his impression, she had always been a rank 9 warrior and did not continue to break through. However, since he was able to get first place on both rankings, then he should be a god-level expert. However, she still didn't know what level he was at. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. You will know when the time comes. At this moment, a cold and childish voice came from inside the house. Come in and cultivate. Chu Liyue rubbed his temples. Ever since she started living at Rong Xiu's place, no one came to disturb her. Her cultivation in all aspects had become much bolder and more convenient. Dugamabao was even more so. Whenever he had time, he would get her to practice. He's here. Chu Liyue responded, took a deep breath, and walked in. After this period of training, Chu Liyue's strength had actually increased a lot. At the very least, she would no longer be defeated by Dugamabao after taking a few steps like before. However, this bit of strength was still far from enough in Dugamabao's eyes. Therefore, almost every time he trained, he would display stronger strength than before. And Chu Liyue was always suppressed. The only good thing was that under this extremely abnormal training, Chu Liyue could clearly feel that her strength as a mystic master had improved by leaps and bounds. She was only one step away from becoming a level 9 mystic master. In the evening, the sparring finally ended. Looking at the chessboard that disappeared with a bang, Chu Liyue let out a long breath. She looked outside at the sky and stood up. Big baby, I agreed to go to 1000 Wine Mountain with them previously. I'll be leaving first. Unexpectedly, Dugamabao did not object. He looked up at her and said, It's good to go. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1234. The sun was setting. Chu Luiwei came out of Mount Jianghu and saw Luo Shishir and the others from afar. She quickly went forward and met up with them. Zhuosheng looked behind her curiously and smacked his lips. Chu Yu, you're on the Azure Cloud roll today. Doesn't senior brother Rong Xiu plan to celebrate with you? Chu Luiwei raised her eyebrows. You want me to invite him to Thousand Wine Mountain? Zhuosheng's thoughts were seen through, but he didn't hide it and chuckled. It's just that I respect senior brother Rong Xiu and want to see more of him. But I think he won't be very interested in this kind of thing. He was just saying that. He didn't really want Chu Luiwei to spend so much effort to invite Rong Xiu. Chu Luiwei remembered that a certain someone had told her not to play outside for too long before she left. She couldn't help but smile. Rong Xiu wasn't just not interested in Thousand Wine Mountain. He also had some opinions about her going to Thousand Wine Mountain. However, he saw that she really wanted to go, so he didn't stop her and let her do as she pleased. If senior brother Rong Xiu goes, I'm afraid everyone won't be able to have a good time. Chu Luiwei said. Many elders in the academy were much more polite when they saw Rong Xiu, let alone these students. If he were to go, he was afraid that everyone present would be extremely restrained. What else was there to say? Luo Shishir couldn't help but laugh. That's true. Many people in the academy admire senior brother Rong Xiu very much, but I'm afraid they won't even be able to say a complete sentence in front of him. Hearing this, Zhuosheng could only shrug his shoulders regretfully. Then let's go by ourselves. When they arrived at Thousand Wine Mountain, the sky was already completely dark. Only halfway up the mountain was a sea of bright lights and a boiling cauldron of voices. It was very lively. Chu Luiwei and the others had just arrived and attracted the attention of many people. The crowd fell silent for a moment. Although Chu Luiwei had been here many times before, today was different. Only because she was ranked on the honor roll of Azure Sky. Dumpling ran out early and squatted on Chu Luiwei's shoulder. When it heard the gurgling sound of the stream, its eyes lit up and it became restless. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many people around, it would have rushed straight to the mouth of the spring. It looked up and rubbed its furry little head against Chu Luiwei's cheek. Its thoughts were clear as day. Chu Luiwei knew that it was waiting impatiently, so he lifted his foot and went up. Many people automatically retreated to the sides to make a path for her. Even though the 100th place on the Celestial Physician ranking wasn't considered a top-notch achievement, everyone in the academy knew that Chu Yu, who occupied this position, had only entered the academy for less than 2 months. Most importantly, he was only 16 years old. It was obvious that this kid's future was limitless. Even if he didn't consider the backing behind him, it was inevitable that people would be wary of him just by looking at his talent and temperament. When Chu Luiwei arrived at the mouth of the spring, there were already a few people standing there. There was a familiar face among them. Lu Yintong. However, before Chu Luiwei could say anything, Lu Yintong had already taken a step back and said, Chu Yu, you're here? I've already reserved this spot for you. You can use it. Chu Luiwei was stunned for a moment, then he looked up and carefully sized up Lu Yintong. Unlike the previous few times when he had seen her, Lu Yintong's expression now carried a rare hint of nervousness. It was as if she was afraid of doing something wrong, but there was also a hint of eagerness to please him. That's strange, Chu Luiwei thought to himself. Lu Yintong's temper was irritable and she had always been competitive. Otherwise, she wouldn't have hated her when her red-tailed phoenix was defeated by Dumpling. But why did it seem like she was a different person now? Senior Sister Lu. Actually, we've already fulfilled our bet. I'll do it myself from now on, so I won't trouble you. Chu Luiwei said. The punishment had been effective, and Lu Yintong had offended many people because of it. In Chu Luiwei's opinion, this matter could be considered over. After all, her time was precious, and she didn't want to waste too much time on this kind of thing. She thought that Lu Yintong would be relieved after hearing this, but she didn't expect her face to turn pale. She couldn't help but take a step forward and ask in panic and worry, No trouble, no trouble. I did something wrong before. As an apology and compensation, this is what I should do. Junior brother Chu Yu, please don't be polite with me. You're not still angry with me, are you? Chu Luiwei's expression became even stranger. What's going on? Lu Yintong still wants to continue? But this matter seems to have more disadvantages than benefits for her, right? Shouldn't a normal person be happy to be able to escape from such torture? Who would be so reluctant to part with it? Chu Luiyue stared at her and realized that her expression didn't seem to be fake. She was even more surprised. She smiled. Senior Sister Lu, why would I be angry with you? Isn't this matter in the past? She didn't like to waste her emotions on this kind of thing. Lu Yintong looked at the young man in front of her nervously. His appearance was clean and delicate, his eyes were clear, and there was a casual and gentle smile at the corner of his mouth. He looked harmless. It seemed like he really didn't care. Lu Yintong secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but she also felt a sense of emptiness. In the short span of 2 months, their identities seemed to have completely reversed. When she first met this young man, she never thought that there would be a time when she would be submissive to him. That's good, she muttered softly and then couldn't help but say. Junior brother Chuyu, I was too impulsive in the past, and that's why I did so many things that you didn't like. I hope you don't mind. I promise I won't do that again. I only hope that junior brother Chu you can let bygones be bygones. For a moment, Chu Luiyue wanted to ask Lu Yintong if she was sick and had a fever. It was normal for her to want to let bygones be bygones. After all, Chu Luiyue had his own place in the academy now. Coupled with the support of a few people behind her, she had truly become a person that wasn't to be trifled with in the academy. Everyone was more or less afraid. But Lu Yintong didn't seem to need to be so eager to please him, right? This didn't seem like something she would do. Senior Sister Lu, if you have something to say, just say it. Chu Luiyue sized her up and said. Lu Yintong instantly felt as if she had been completely seen through. At this moment, she realized that Chu Yu was more intelligent and cunning than she had imagined. She clenched her fists tightly, and her nails dug into her palms. After hesitating for a while, she said, No, nothing. I just feel that I've gone too far in the past. So, if junior brother Chu Yu needs my help in the future, just say the word. Before Chu Luiyue could reply, he suddenly heard a mocking voice from the side. Junior brother Chu Yu is now protected by elder Wan Zheng and senior brother Rong Xiu. Why would he need your help? Aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 12:35. The crowd fell silent. Chu Luiyue turned around and saw a familiar face. It was Liang Xiaoxiao. She and Jiang Ziyuan came side by side, and the words just now came out of her mouth. If junior brother Chu Yu hadn't caught senior brother Rong Xiu's eye, I'm sure you'd still be thinking about how to deal with him, right? Lu Yintong's face turned pale. This Liang Xiaoxiao had never given her any face. They had fallen out with each other last time. Now that they saw each other again, they were naturally jealous. Do you think you can make up for what you've done just by saying a few nice words? Liang Xiaoxiao covered her mouth and smiled. Don't you think it's too late to apologize now? Do you think everyone is stupid and can't figure out your real intention? Isn't he just trying to get closer to senior brother Rong Xiu through Chu Yu? Liang Xiaoxiao poked Jiang Jiwan's arm. Xian, you know senior Rong Xiu very well. Why don't you tell him if he'll fall for it? Jiang Jiwan said lightly. He has always been cold and aloof. He won't take it to heart. Besides, she paused, glanced at Lu Yintong, and said with a hidden meaning. Besides, he hates it when others pester him. Even she, who had been infatuated with Rong Xiu for a long time and was the princess that the old patriarch of the Yuntian Tower had set his eyes on, didn't dare to do anything out of line. A few years ago, she had been working hard on her cultivation and didn't even see Rong Xiu's face. Last time at the Yuntian Tower, she barged in and was taught a lesson. Let alone others. Lu Yintong clenched her teeth. Don't you dare slander me. I just feel sorry for what I did to Junior Chu Yu, so... Before she could finish her sentence, she heard Liang Xiaoxiao's mocking laughter. Lu Yintong, do you believe what you just said? Lu Yintong could no longer continue. Her face was burning. Chu Luiyue, who was standing at the side, blinked and then realized, so it was because of Rong Xiu. Lu Yintong's change in attitude was simply too inexplicable. Sensing her gaze, Lu Yintong felt even more embarrassed. She finally turned around and left quickly. That back view, no matter how one looked at it, had the intention of fleeing. Liang Xiaoxiao crossed her arms and sneered. You really haven't given up on your evil intentions. Senior brother Rong Xiu had already said it so clearly, but he still dared to have such improper thoughts. He really didn't have the slightest self-awareness. On the other hand, Jiang Jiwan didn't seem to be so agitated. Her expression was relatively calm, and she only raised her eyes to look at Chu Luiyue. After pausing for a moment, she suddenly walked towards Chu Luiyue. When they finally stood still, the distance between them was only 3 steps. She gave Chu Luiyue a generous and appropriate smile. Junior brother Chu Yu, thank you for what you did before. Jiang Jiwan was born very beautiful. Her body was slender, and her facial features were exquisite. Although it was night, under the illumination of the surrounding lights, she appeared even more lovely and moving. Her smile was pure with a tinge of gentleness, causing many people around her to stare blankly at her. Unfortunately, this trick was useless against Chu Luiyue. She also smiled. Deep in her black jade-like eyes, there was a wave of calmness. Senior sister Jiang, why are you thanking me? Jiang Jiwan saw that the young man in front of her didn't seem to be moved by her goodwill, and couldn't help but feel a little dissatisfied. This Chu Yu, why does it seem like I can't see through his thoughts? However, these thoughts only flashed through her mind, and all her emotions didn't show on her face. Her smile didn't change, and she said softly, naturally, it's to thank you for helping senior brother Rong Xiu block that blow. Although his strength is tyrannical, and generally there won't be any problems when encountering such things, but it's good to have junior brother Chu Yu's help. Her eyebrows were tinged with a bit of worry, but the smile on her lips deepened, and her beautiful eyes were full of sincerity. I heard that this time he returned safely and wasn't seriously injured. If junior brother Chu Yu wasn't quick-witted and went through the academy's barrier in time, I'm afraid the consequences would be unimaginable. Needless to say, junior brother Chu Yu was punished to stay in Min Mountain for a month. For him, junior brother Chu Yu sacrificed a lot. Chu Luiyue's eyes moved slightly, and the corners of her mouth hooked up into a smile. Jiang Jiwan's words, on the surface, seemed to be praising her, but in fact, she was secretly mocking her for not knowing what was good for her, for violating the academy's rules and forcibly breaking through the barrier. In the eyes of most people, this was not something to be proud of after all. Unfortunately, these words didn't have any lethality to Chu Luiyue, because she didn't care about the opinions and criticisms of others at all. Moreover, staying in Min Mountain was quite enjoyable. Thus, after hearing these words, Chu Luiyue didn't get angry or embarrassed. Instead, she smiled even more brilliantly and pushed the boat with the current. Senior sister Jiang, you flatter me. I only did something small that I could do. I really don't dare to claim credit. Moreover, senior brother Rong Xiu has already thanked me personally. Senior sister Jiang doesn't need to do anything unnecessary, right? Jiang Jiwan's face instantly lit up. Chu Luiyue didn't seem to notice and continued, I helped senior brother Rong Xiu, not you, senior sister Jiang. I think senior martial sister Jiang should take back her words of thanks. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good to be misunderstood by others. Jiang Jiwan's heart burned with anger. Was Chu Yu slapping her face in front of everyone? She forced a smile and said, I grew up with His Highness the Holy Sun since we were young. We have a deep friendship, so there's no need to make such a clear distinction. In order to save face, she even changed the way she addressed Rong Xiu. Oh! Chu Luiyue interrupted her and said with a smile that was not a smile. When senior sister Jiang said that, I almost thought that senior brother Rong Xiu's princess consort was senior sister Jiang. The smile on Jiang Jiwan's face finally couldn't be maintained. She could tell that this Chu Yu didn't plan to speak to her peacefully. He was young, but he had a sharp tongue. The atmosphere was awkward and cold. Everyone could hear the sarcasm in Chu Luiyue's words just now. That's right. At the end of the day, Jiang Jiwan didn't have any special relationship with Rong Xiu. What right did she have to say, "thank you," for him? Speaking of which, in the entire academy, wasn't Chuyu the closest person to Rongxiu? What she said just now was really laughable. Jiang Jiwon took a deep breath. In fact, from the first time she saw this Chuyu, she didn't like him very much. She didn't know where this feeling came from, but it lingered. Seeing the dumpling squatting on Chu Liyue's shoulder, she narrowed her eyes and suddenly said, "Junior brother Chuyu, this contracted divine beast of yours looks rather familiar." She remembered clearly that Chu Liyue also had an identical red-tailed phoenix. She suddenly thought of something and turned her gaze to Chu Liyue. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 12:36. Red-tailed Red Phoenix? Chu Liyue calmly turned his head to look at Dumpling and smiled calmly. It's not strange that senior sister Jiang looks familiar. After all, senior sister Lu has won, right? Jiang Ji-won was stunned and immediately frowned. No, that's not right. She felt that this red-tailed red phoenix looked familiar, and it was definitely not just because it was a red-tailed red phoenix. She had also seen Lu Yintong's red-tailed red phoenix before. Although they were of the same race, in reality, due to the difference in bloodline power and other reasons, it looked different from the one in front of her. She could clearly tell the difference between these two divine beasts. In comparison, the one in front of her was more like the one she had fought before. At first, she didn't feel it, but now that she was standing close and looking at it carefully, the more she looked, the more she felt that it was similar. Once this thought was born, it seemed to have taken root in her mind, and she couldn't get rid of it. "No, your red-tailed red phoenix is different," she said, looking at Chu Liyue with eyes full of scrutiny. Something was indeed wrong. According to Rongxiu's personality, it was impossible for him to value someone so much for no reason, and it was even more impossible for him to let her live with him. Unless he had known this person for a long time. Moreover, their relationship was definitely not shallow. Jiang Jiwon looked at the youth in front of her carefully, trying to find even the slightest bit of hesitation and guilt on his face. However, there was none. From head to toe, the youth's expression was as usual. In the face of her interrogation, he actually laughed, with a hint of the mischievous and undisciplined aura of a youth. My contracted divine beast naturally can't be compared to those. There was a hint of pride in his laughter, full of confidence and natural ease in his voice. It was really hard for people to doubt him when he looked like this. "Senior Sister Jiang, if you like it, you can take a look more. This color is very beautiful, and it's rare to see it elsewhere." Jiang Ji-won didn't believe it and stared at the red-tailed red phoenix for a while. It squatted on the young man's shoulder. It was a furry little ball, and its whole body was red. From afar, it looked like a ball of fire. It seemed to have sensed Jiang Ji-won's gaze. It turned its head to look at her, then lazily buried its head in its wings. Only then did Jiang Ji-won discover that this red-tailed red phoenix seemed to be a little different from the one in her impression. The color of its feathers and eyes seemed to be denser than that one. Could it be that I was wrong? Chu Liyue patted Dumpling gently. "Go." Dumpling raised her head, her eyes sparkling. She rubbed her head against Chu Liyue's face in a fawning manner, then quickly flew towards the spring. Because there were many people around, Dumpling restrained herself and only landed on a rock beside the spring. The spring water gurgled out, and her little head was almost buried in it. During this period of time, Chu Liyue would bring Dumpling over whenever she had time. Therefore, this wasn't the first time many people had seen such a scene, so it didn't attract much attention. Chu Liyue looked at Jiang Ji-won, who was deep in thought. "Senior Jiang, is there anything else? If not, my friends and I will be going over there." Jiang Ji-won wanted to say something but stopped. She wanted to ask her in detail, but in the end she swallowed those words back. "Xiao Xiao, let's go." With that, she turned around to leave. Liang Xiaoxiao looked surprised and hurriedly pulled her. "Hey, why are you suddenly leaving? We just arrived." Jiang Ji-won frowned. "I suddenly feel a little uncomfortable and want to go back and rest." Liang Xiaoxiao was even more puzzled. Uncomfortable? Wasn't she fine just now? Why did she suddenly become like this? Was it because of what Chu Yu said just now that made her unhappy? After thinking about it, Liang Xiaoxiao felt that it was because of this. All right then, I'll go back with you. Jiang Jiwan shook her head. No need. You stay here, that's it. Don't ruin the mood because of me. Liang Xiaoxiao didn't really want to leave. After all, this was the day they could relax the most every month. If she left like this, it would be boring to go back. Then you'll be fine, right? Jiang Jiwan forced a smile. Don't worry. I can still do such a small thing. Then she declined the request of a few young men to send her back and left alone. Liang Xiaoxiao looked at her back view and shrugged. Although she and Jiang Jiwan were best friends and had a good relationship, Jiang Jiwan still had reservations about her many times. She wasn't stupid, so how could she not see any clues? But there was no need to pursue this matter so much. People from aristocratic families like them knew what to say and what not to say. Although her talent wasn't top-notch, she still had a discerning eye. Liang Xiaoxiao quickly retracted her gaze and went to play with the others. Chu Luiwei looked at Dumpling, who wanted nothing more than to dive into the spring, and thought about staying in Thousand Wine Mountain. Dumpling only came here once every night, and after a period of time, there were obvious changes. If she could stay here for a month and completely awaken the power of her bloodline, what would it be like? After Jiang Jiwan left Thousand Wine Mountain, she quickly returned to her residence. After entering the room, she carefully closed the door and sat down at the desk. After thinking for a moment, she spread out a piece of paper and began to write a letter. After a while, a letter was written. She carefully folded the letter and stuffed it into the body of a prepared bronze bird. After injecting a stream of force, the bronze bird flapped its wings and flew outside. Under the thick night sky, the bronze bird's figure quickly disappeared. Jiang Jiwan clasped her hands in front of her and frowned. She was very suspicious of Chu Yu's identity. Also, Rong Xiu's attitude towards him was very suspicious. After thinking about it, she decided to write a letter back to the Immortal Water Mausoleum and ask her father for help to investigate. If she found anything wrong with Chu Yu, she would expose it immediately. 9 Eternal Mountain. In the silence, the void vibrated. Then, a figure appeared in front of the house. Dressed in black, he was tall and straight. It was Rong Xiu. From the looks of it, he had just returned from somewhere. He was about to walk forward when he suddenly paused and looked back. Under the dark sky, he could only see the undulating mountain range. Suddenly, a murderous intent flashed past his deep phoenix eyes. Swish. He waved his sleeve and a stream of black force flew out. Very soon, the origin power returned with a bronze bird in tow. Rong Xiu looked at the bronze bird and narrowed his eyes dangerously. Bang! There was a slight explosion. The bronze bird instantly shattered. A letter fell from it. Rong Xiu raised his hand and the letter fell into his hand. He opened it and glanced at it. With a slight movement of his fingers, the letter silently turned into powder. Then he took out a snow-white handkerchief and wiped his hands. A cluster of golden flames burned, and the handkerchief was quickly burned to ashes. He turned around and entered the house. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1237. 10,000 Wine Mountain. Time slowly passed, and gradually, people began to leave. Luo Yanming looked at the sky and said, I have to go first too. Master just gave me a few Shen formations today and said that there will be an assessment in a few days. I have to hurry. Luo Shishir and the others expressed their understanding. Although Elder Huafeng was amiable, he was actually very strict in this aspect. In addition, there was Luo Yanlin, who had always been outstanding, so as his younger brother, Luo Yanming naturally felt even more pressure. By the way, Chu Yu, when you have time later, I want to spar with you. Luo Yanming looked at Chu Luiwei and said sincerely. Chu Luiwei raised his eyebrows in surprise. Then, he thought that Elder Huafeng must have said something to make Luo Yanming have such an idea. She smiled and nodded slightly. Actually, during this period of time, there had been all kinds of rumors about how Chu Yu passed through the Academy's barrier. But no matter which one it was, It was basically confirmed that Chu Yu was also a Xian master. Luo Yanming had been by Elder Huafeng's side for the past few days and had indeed heard him mention this matter a lot. Although Elder Huafeng didn't elaborate, it wasn't difficult to guess that Chu Yu was extremely talented as a Xian master. This made Luo Yanming a little curious, which was why she made this invitation. Luo Yanming smiled when he saw her agree. Then it's a deal. With that, he quickly left. Zhuoxing couldn't help but turn around to size up Chu Luiwei and smile in surprise. To be able to make Yanming want to fight? Chu Yu, you're really amazing. Your level as a Xian master shouldn't be low, right? Chu Luiwei rubbed his chin. Not really, but thanks to my good master, it's still passable. Zhuoxing and Luo Shishir naturally thought that the master she was talking about was Rong Xiu, so they didn't ask further. After a while, there were fewer and fewer people on the mountain. Let's go too. When Luo Shishir said this, she deliberately stared at Chu Luiwei. She didn't want what happened last time to repeat itself. There can be 1 and 2, but not 3. No one knew what kind of punishment they would receive if they did it again. Especially the one in front of him. Chu Luiwei smiled helplessly. He knew what she was worried about, so he could only raise his hands. All right. Let's leave now. Luo Shishir couldn't help but laugh. When she saw the young man's dark eyes, her heart couldn't help but tremble slightly, as if she had been hit by something. Her face heated up slightly and she lowered her head. Chu Luiwei didn't notice her expression. He turned around and called out to a certain little thing that was already drunk and didn't know where to go. Dumpling, let's go. Dumpling shakily raised her head from the spring. Despite her reluctance, Dumpling forced herself to fly back. I wonder when I'll be able to relive those happy days again. It smacked its lips, closed its eyes, and began to digest the power it had devoured today. Just as they were about to leave, Chu Luiwei suddenly felt a strange fluctuation coming from his body. She was stunned, because this fluctuation was very unfamiliar. She stopped in her tracks and carefully sensed it. Sure enough, another fluctuation came over. Girl, the sword soul of the Long Yuan sword has almost completely fused with this sword. There's only one step left before it can be awakened. Taizu's voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Chu Luiwei was stunned. Taizu? What do you mean by that? Taizu explained, this sword soul is very powerful. This divine artifact's grade is extremely high. Although it has already recognized you as its master, it is still not completely yours. Only after it has been tempered by Tianlei can it achieve sword soul fusion and forge the sword soul of the Long Yuan sword into a weapon soul. Only then can it be truly controlled by you. Chu Luiwei was stunned for a moment. So, you're saying that if I want to use this sword, I still have to trigger Tianlei and temper it? But with her current strength, it was impossible for her to do that. As if guessing her thoughts, Taizu said, don't worry. Just like last time, I'll help you lure Tianlei over. At that time, you just have to control that sword and help it forge a weapon soul. Because you're the owner of the Long Yuan sword, the sword soul will only listen to you, so only you can do this. But Chu Luiwei was a little hesitant. Triggering Tianlei in the academy would definitely attract the attention of many elders. Moreover, this sword of hers was originally an item of the academy's ancestors. When the sword soul becomes a weapon soul, I can also escape from here. Taizu suddenly sighed. Chu Luiwei was shocked. What? Taizu, you mean you can come out of here? This was just a remnant of Taizu's consciousness. Logically speaking, when the Long Yuan sword recognized her as its master, it should have dissipated. But it didn't. And since then, Taizu had been residing in the Long Yuan sword, almost fusing with it. Chu Luiwei never thought that Taizu would have a chance of successfully escaping. Taizu sighed faintly. I never thought that this day would come. But ever since the Long Yuan sword recognized you as its master, the sword's soul has become stronger day by day. Now that it has fused with that divine artifact, it's even more shocking. The moment it transforms into a weapon soul, perhaps, will be the moment when I can escape from here. A flash of inspiration flashed through Chu Luiwei's mind. Her heart beat violently. Taizu, she spoke with difficulty. Even she felt that every word she said was absurd and unbelievable. You are still alive? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1238. Of course, this alive wasn't referring to the remnant divine consciousness, but the real Shangguan Jing. No, if it could leave the divine artifact and survive independently, then it shouldn't be called divine consciousness. That was Taizu's real soul. Chu Liuyue's question made Taizu fall silent. After a while, the great ancestor let out a long sigh. You don't know either. His voice was much lower, as if he had aged a lot in an instant. It was mixed with the loneliness and lamentation of thousands of years, as well as a trace of confusion. This was the first time Chu Liyue heard Taizu speak to her in such a tone. He seemed to really not know. I spent thousands of years alone in the Tianling God realm. There are indeed many things that I have forgotten, including my death back then. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. In the secret history of the Tianling dynasty, it had always been recorded that Taizu had tried to break through the shackles and become a god-level powerhouse, but he failed and died. After his death, the Long Yuan sword was left in the half-divine realm that he had painstakingly condensed as a supporting divine artifact. As for the great ancestor, it was only natural that he should have vanished into thin air in that failure. Chu Liyue had always believed in this matter because what she had heard and seen before was exactly the same. Although she had secretly wondered why Taizu's divine consciousness hadn't dissipated after the Long Yuan sword recognized its master. But at that time, she didn't think too much about it. Until now, Taizu could actually be independent of the divine artifact. Moreover, Taizu even said that he had forgotten his death back then. How could a top powerhouse forget what happened at the end of his life? There was probably something wrong with this. Chuyu? Luo Shishir and Zhuosheng walked for a while before realizing that Chu Liyue wasn't following them. She turned around and saw that she was standing there alone, as if in a daze. Zhuosheng raised his voice again. Chuyu, what are you thinking about? We should go. Chu Liyue finally regained his senses. As she spoke, she walked towards the two of them. What happened to you? Zhuosheng looked at her strangely. Everything was fine just now. How did it become like this all of a sudden? Chuyu, are you all right? Luo Shishir frowned worriedly. Although the expression on Chuyu's face was still relatively calm, this kind of absent-minded appearance was extremely rare. Chu Liyue closed his eyes and suppressed the waves in his heart. Don't worry, I'm fine. It's just that I suddenly thought of something just now and was lost in it for a moment, so I didn't follow you guys. Hey, what's the matter? Why are you so concerned about it? Zhuosheng's interest was immediately piqued. He grinned and asked mysteriously. Chu Liyue smiled. It's nothing important. It's not worth mentioning. This meant that he didn't want to reveal it. However, Zhuosheng wasn't someone who wanted to get to the bottom of things. Seeing that Chu Liyue didn't want to say more, he didn't continue asking. It's not too late to think about it when we get back. Let's hurry up and leave. If we're late, we won't be able to bear the consequences. Luo Shishir frowned slightly, but she didn't ask any more questions. The three of them continued to walk down the mountain. This time, they left in time. When they reached the bottom of the mountain and walked out of the barrier, they vaguely heard the sound of wind and thunder coming from the top of the mountain. Chu Liyue turned around to take a look. In fact, they couldn't see anything through the barrier. However, she seemed to be able to feel the imposing Tianlei falling down one after another. It was a pity that she couldn't stay here. She retracted her gaze, said goodbye to Luo Shishir, and left on her own. When she returned to Jianghu Mountain, it was already late at night. However, the light in Rong Xiu's room was still on. Rong Xiu had just walked out of his room. You're back. Chu Liyue's heart warmed. She didn't know if it was because of Rong Xiu's patience or something else. For a moment, she clearly felt a sweet and soft warmth surging from the bottom of her heart to her limbs and bones, enveloping her. She nodded. You've been waiting for me? Rong Xiu's lips curled into a faint smile. Yes and no. I was looking at something quite interesting just now. Anything that caught Rong Xiu's eye was definitely not an ordinary item. Chu Luiwei was a little interested. What is it? Rong Xiu walked over and held her hand. Come with me. His warm and broad palm instantly wrapped around her somewhat cold hand. The familiar cold fragrance filled her body, making her feel more at ease and her whole body relaxed. She obediently followed Rong Xiu into the room. After entering, Rong Xiu brought her to the desk. Chu Luiwei immediately saw a book on top of it. The pages of the book were yellowed, and it seemed to be quite old. Is this the thing you're talking about? Chu Luiwei looked at Rong Xiu strangely. Rong Xiu raised his chin and smiled. Take a look first. Only then did Chu Luiwei pick up the book. However, when she held it in her hand, she was shocked to find that the book looked old and thin, but it was actually very heavy. If it wasn't for her physical strength, she might not have been able to pick it up. What is this? Chu Luiwei's voice came to an abrupt halt when she saw the cover. Because there was a painting on it. It was a carefully drawn picture of a sword. It was simple, grand, solemn, and dignified. The lines seemed to penetrate the back of the paper, wrapped in a great force. Just a casual glance like this almost made one unable to breathe. However, this was not the most important thing. The sword drawn in this picture was clearly the divine artifact that she had obtained not long ago. Digression. September Peripheral Event Winners List. 1. Star of Monthly Votes. Shue Shueli, 142/2. Star of Commentary. UUX9 Memories of Qian 2. QQ Reading Star of Recommendation Votes. Dislike, 150. Star of Commentary. Ling Bao, Ri Luoshi Down, Red Sleeves. Please join the group as soon as possible and find February to verify the peripheral events. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1239. This is... She looked at Rong Xiu in shock. This is the notebook left behind by that senior, said Rong Xiu with a smile. It took me a lot of effort to find it. Although these words sounded like a joke, Chu Luiwei understood that it was extremely difficult to find this book. There were tens of millions of books in the academy. It was easy to imagine how much effort it took to find this book in the vast sea of books. Moreover, the academy had spent a lot of effort to get this divine artifact back. Everything related to it must have been strictly guarded. Rong Xiu could even get his hands on this. Chu Luiwei held the book. Her fingertips could still feel the rough and heavy pages of the book. Something seemed to be surging in her chest. This thing, the academy wouldn't let it out so easily, right? How did you get it? Without that divine artifact, the existence of this notebook is meaningless. In the whole world, this notebook is only a true treasure in your hands. If they didn't give it to you, it would be meaningless to leave it on the shelf. So this thing isn't that difficult to get. Rong Xiu said it casually, but Chu Luiwei knew that things weren't that simple. But Rong Xiu obviously didn't intend to explain in detail. Even if she continued to ask, she probably wouldn't get anything out of him. I promised you before that I would bring this thing to you. Naturally, I won't go back on my word. Rong Xiu said as he held her face and kissed her forehead. His breath was warm, as if it could make one's heart boil. Chu Luiwei looked up at him. Rong Xiu. Her red lips moved slightly. She wanted to say something, but after thinking about it, she felt that words were so weak. This man would always stand by her side and give her everything she wanted. In the whole world, there were very few people who could do this. However, he did it. And from the beginning until now, he had never flaunted how good he was. It was as if all this was natural. How rare was it to have such a husband in this world? She reached out and grabbed the front of Rong Xiu's shirt and pulled hard. Rong Xiu cooperated and bowed slightly. Chu Luiwei kissed his lips. This kiss was unbelievably soft and sweet, dazzlingly sweet. After a while, the two finally separated. Rong Xiu held her tightly in his arms and rested his chin on her shoulder. His voice was low and hoarse. Is this a reward? His voice still carried a trace of muddiness from his infatuation, and when it entered her ears, it practically instantly entered into the depths of her heart, causing her heart to tremble. No, Chu Luiwei closed his eyes. Slav. In the end, Chu Luiwei returned to his room. According to a certain someone, he wasn't sure what would happen if they stayed together under such circumstances. Therefore, Chu Luiwei went back obediently. Late at night, the surroundings were silent. Only the occasional rustling of the night wind through the forest could be heard, but it seemed even lonelier. Chu Luiwei sat cross-legged, holding the notebook in her hand. At this time, that frightening aura still didn't diminish at all. Chu Luiwei's gaze swept over it carefully. This was a sword. Some strange golden patterns were engraved on the scabbard, looking solemn and mysterious. The sword hilt was blue gold and carved into a dragon's head. Its eyes were deep, as if bottomless darkness. Just by looking at it like this, one would feel as if they were about to be swallowed by it. Further up was a round stem, smooth and clean, completely black, with a tassel hanging from the end. So this sword is also related to the dragon clan. Chu Luiwei murmured softly. If that was the case, it was no wonder that the sword soul of the Dragon Abyss sword could be successfully integrated into it. Of course, there should be Taizu's help in this to succeed in the end. She moved her mind. Flowing light flashed in front of her. In the next moment, a long sword suddenly appeared in front of her. It floated quietly in midair, but the surrounding space seemed to be slightly distorted by this terrifying aura. This showed how strong the power contained in it was. Chu Luiwei stared at the sword in front of her. It looked exactly the same as the one drawn in the notebook. However, because that book was an item from too long ago, although it was well preserved, it was still yellowed and old. It looked as if it was covered with a layer of grayish-yellow gauze. When this sword appeared in front of her, she could clearly feel the vast aura that seemed to come from a distant time and space. Everything was so fresh. Chu Luiwei flipped open the notebook. 3 vigorous and powerful words appeared on the title page. Red Cloud Sword. Chu Luiwei carefully flipped through the entire book bit by bit. When she finished reading the last page, she closed it, finally closed her eyes, and let out a long breath. So, the owner of this sword, who was also its forger, was Elder Fan Bei. Back then, Elder Fan Bei obtained a precious sword embryo and made up his mind to forge a peerless sword. In order to forge this sword, he went to the Dark Feathers Abyss and spent a full 3 months there, guiding Tianlei to temper it every day before finally forging it. Unfortunately, these 3 months had exhausted all his strength and blood essence. The moment Red Cloud Sword appeared, he was already a lamp that had run out of oil. In the end, he knew that he did not have much time left, so he simply took the blood from his heart and poured it on Red Cloud Sword. With his own life as a guide, he made it reborn and crossed the threshold of a venerable artifact. In the end, the sword was forged and he died. And this Red Cloud Sword, before it could be born, fell in the Dark Feathers Abyss together with it. For thousands of years, this sword was buried deep and never saw the light of day again. Until recently, when the Dark Feathers Abyss was in chaos, the Lingxiao College elders realized that Red Cloud Sword was about to be born. In fact, many people knew that there was a divine artifact buried in the Dark Feathers Abyss. Otherwise, the Golden Wing sect and many other sects would not have sent so many people to fight for it. It was rumored that it was an Emperor Divine artifact. But in fact, it was a real venerable artifact. Fortunately, this thing was snatched back by the Lingxiao College in the end, and not many people knew the true level of this divine artifact. Otherwise, it would have become a big trouble. This book was written by Elder Fan Bei when he was forging the Scarlet Heaven Sword in the past. It recorded every step of forging Red Cloud Sword, and also some of Elder Fan Bei's experience. However, because Elder Fan Bei died when this sword was just forged, he did not leave behind the incantation to use it. Thus, Chu Luiwei could only research it herself from the previous records. However, this level of divine artifact was extremely intelligent. As long as she could completely master it, this would not be a problem. Chu Luiwei put away the book and looked up at Red Cloud's sword in front of her. She took a deep breath and held the sword hilt. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1240. Then she pulled with all her might. The Scarlet Heaven sword did not move at all. Chu Luiwei was stunned and took a closer look. The sword? It's not rusty, why can't I pull it out? She gritted her teeth, increased her strength, and tried again. The Scarlet Heaven sword still did not react. The sword seemed to be firmly embedded in the scabbard. No matter how Chu Luiwei tried, she could not pull it out. After failing several times, Taizu's voice sounded faintly. Girl, don't waste your energy. If you don't refine this sword, you won't be able to use it. Chu Luiwei suddenly came back to her senses. What? Doesn't that mean that as long as I don't refine it, I won't be able to use this sword? Taizu pondered for a moment and said seriously, that seems to be the case. Oh right, I forgot to tell you, because the Long Yuan sword's soul has been transferred to this sword, so from now on, the Long Yuan sword is useless. Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat, and she immediately summoned the Long Yuan sword. The black arrow was cold and heavy in her hand. She poured her force into it, but the Long Yuan sword did not have any reaction. The pressure of a venerable artifact is heavy, and it can easily crush the Long Yuan sword. If I wasn't here, the Long Yuan sword would have been destroyed the moment the sword's soul was transferred. Taizu sighed. How can a venerable artifact be so easy to control? Chu Luiwei. So, what was her situation now? The Long Yuan sword could not be used, and the Scarlet Heaven sword could not even be pulled out. She rubbed the space between her eyebrows with a headache. If that was the case, didn't that mean that she only had one path left? Hee girl, actually, this is nothing. Anyway, with me here I can help you trigger Tianlei, and you can also complete the tempering. Isn't this quite simple? Chu Luiwei, Taizu seemed to think too highly of her. But at this point, it seemed that there was no other way to solve the problem other than this. She thought for a moment. Then Taizu, please lend me a hand. Chu Luiwei walked out of the room and came to the top of the mountain. To trigger Tianlei, this place was naturally the most suitable. The only concern was that if the commotion was too big, it would attract the attention of many people's attention. But now, she could not care less. Besides, there's a barrier that Rong Xiu set up outside Jianghu Mountain, so it should be able to hide it. Chu Luiwei found a relatively flat spot on the mountain peak, took out the star stone, and placed Qi Shao sword on it. A translucent figure flew out. It was the Great Ancestor. Chu Luiwei glanced at Taizu's eyes. Great Ancestor, why do I feel that your body seems to have become much more solid than before? In the past, the Great Ancestor's phantom was filled with an illusory aura, but now, there was a huge change. Luiwei's, as of God? Yes, I feel the same way. The longer he stayed with Chu Luiwei, the stronger his aura became. When they first met, he was almost in a state where he could disappear at any time. But now, he was getting stronger. He didn't know what was going on either. However, ever since the sword soul of the Dragon Abyss sword entered the Scarlet Heaven sword, he realized that he no longer needed to rely on it and could live freely. Chu Luiwei was more and more certain of her previous guess. This should be a part of Taizu's soul. It was just that 1,000 years had reduced his strength and destroyed his memories. That was why even he thought that he was just a remnant of his divine consciousness. Chu Luiwei thought for a moment. Suddenly, a thought flashed through her mind. If Taizu's soul was still there, then, when she refined Scarlet Heaven Sword's soul, did that mean that Taizu would have a chance to take over her body and come back to life? She took a deep breath and suppressed this thought. It would not be too late to think about everything after the refinement was completed. Girl, step back a little. Taizu stood in the air with a serious expression. Chu Luiwei took 5 steps back. Her eyes were fixed on the star stone and Scarlet Heaven sword that was placed on it. Taizu raised his hands, and the aura around him began to surge crazily. A powerful aura spread out in all directions. Soon, dark clouds gathered in the sky. The originally bright moon was covered by thick clouds, and the world became darker and darker. There were rolling mountains all around, and it was silent. Only the sound of the wind passed through the mountains, and the forest rustled. Chu Luiwei's heart seemed to be gripped by something, and her ears were filled with the sound of her heart beating violently. The wind and clouds whistled. Dark clouds surged. Finally, a bright bolt of heavenly lightning shot out from behind the accumulated layers of clouds. Then a second one. A third one. Chu Luiyue sucked in a breath of cold air. The speed of Tianlei's appearance was far beyond her imagination. Who knew how many Tianlei's tempering would be needed to refine a venerable divine weapon's soul? Such a scene was far from what she could compare to when she forged the Cloud Sky Copper Sword. Almost at the same time, Rong Xiu, who had just laid down, suddenly opened his eyes. He lifted the blanket and jumped down from the bed. He pushed open the door and looked toward the top of the mountain. Several Tianlei were circling in the sky, swimming wildly. He narrowed his eyes and then raised his hand. A golden stream of light flew out, transforming into countless light spots, and landed on the barrier outside Mount Jianghu. The barrier strengthened again, and completely concealed everything that was happening inside. Chu Luiyue was completely unaware of this, because all her attention was on the Tianlei that was about to land. In a short time, dozens of silver snake-like Tianlei had gathered in the dark clouds. Most importantly, the number was still increasing. Back then, in order to forge the Dragon Abyss Sword, I triggered a total of 81 Tianlei. Now that the Scarlet Cloud Sword is a venerable divine weapon, I don't know how big of a commotion it will cause. Taizu said in a low voice as he triggered the Tianlei. Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched violently. The Scarlet Cloud Sword was 2 grades higher than the Dragon Abyss Sword, and there was a huge gap between them. It was simply unimaginable to fill the gap between them. The black star stone reflected the numerous Tianlei in the sky, and the stars flickered. Finally, when the stars covered it, the Scarlet Cloud Sword finally rose slowly into the air. It floated quietly above the star stone, and its entire body emitted a shocking aura. It had not officially started yet, but Chu Luiyue already felt as if her heart was being heavily pressed by something, and even breathing became difficult. I wonder what kind of scene it would be when the Tianlei landed. Just as this thought flashed through her mind, she heard a loud sound coming from the sky. Boom! A thick and dazzling bolt of heavenly lightning struck down in an instant. It went straight for the Scarlet Cloud Sword. Chu Luiyue was almost blinded by the dazzling light. Following that, loud rumbling sounds rang out one after another. Boom! Boom! It was those Tianlei that struck down one after another. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1241. Chu Luiyue had never seen such a scene before. Countless Tianlei surged over crazily as if they were free. Like a huge silver sword, it broke through the clouds and slashed down from the sky. Looking up, it was as if it was going to split the heavens and earth. The light was dazzling and the sound was earth-shattering. The powerful impact almost sent Chu Luiyue flying. She immediately stabbed the long yuan sword into the ground. She clenched her fists tightly to prevent herself from being swept away by the wind. Her clothes fluttered in the wind, and only the crazy whistling sound was left in her ears. The great ancestor's expression was unprecedentedly serious and solemn, because from the moment he saw those Tianlei appear, he knew that today would be a tough battle. He was afraid that this would be the most powerful Tianlei that he had ever summoned in his life. After those Tianlei fell, new Tianlei quickly appeared. Taizu's power was quickly consumed in the crazy and terrifying tempering process. At such times, time seemed to be especially difficult to endure. Just as Chu Luiyue felt that her face was about to be cut by that terrifying power, the Scarlet Cloud Sword finally moved. A golden light appeared on the scabbard. It flashed quietly. The surrounding Tianlei's light was very dazzling, but when this golden light appeared, it did not cover up even a fraction of its brilliance. Chu Luiyue saw clearly that it was the golden pattern on the scabbard that exploded with bright light. "Girl, go!" Great Ancestor bellowed. Chu Luiyue immediately leaped. She grabbed the hilt of the Scarlet Cloud Sword. Countless silver lights flashed on the scabbard. The hilt was cold, but the power of the Tianlei was boiling. The two extreme powers merged together. Chu Luiyue gritted her teeth and grabbed the sword tightly. A familiar aura gradually surged into her heart. It was the sword spirit of the Long Yuan sword. In order to refine it into an artifact soul, Scarlet Heaven Sword had to withstand the beating of these Tianlei. For some reason, the Tianlei people avoided Chu Luiwei when they passed by him. This relieved her of a lot of pressure. As the Tianlei continued to fall, a seal on the scabbard seemed to be peeling off. The runes that had been silent for 1,000 years finally began to emit their original golden light. Chu Luiwei gripped the hilt of her sword with both hands, allowing the violent energy to surge around her, but she remained unmoved. A wisp of origin power quietly poured into Scarlet Heaven Sword. Time seemed to have become particularly unbearable. After an unknown period of time, Chu Luiwei's hands had become numb from the terrifying power. The power in his body was almost impossible to suppress, and there were faint signs that it was about to go berserk. However, Tianlei was still striking down. It seemed like it would never end. Chu Luiwei forced his eyes open and looked up. In the bright silver light that filled the sky, she almost couldn't see anything clearly. This meant that Tianlei's attack was far from over. She gritted her teeth and tried her best to circulate the origin power in her body. More and more power was poured into Scarlet Heaven Sword, and the golden runes on the scabbard became clearer. She could clearly feel that the subtle connection between her and Scarlet Heaven Sword was also constantly strengthening. As long as she persevered until the end, she would definitely succeed. However, at this moment, a sudden and strange fluctuation came from behind her. Chu Luiwei looked back, and through the flickering light, she was shocked to see Taizu kneeling on the ground as if his strength was exhausted. His body became much more illusory, as if he would be blown away by the wind at any time. His face was even paler, and his originally spirited face seemed to have aged a lot in an instant. Chu Luiwei's heart clenched. "Taizu!" She shouted nervously. "How are you?" Hearing her voice, Taizu forced himself to stand up. "I'm fine. It's just that there's too much Tianlei, and I've consumed too much energy." Hearing the weakness in his voice, Chu Luiwei became even more worried. Although Taizu did not have a physical body, his strength was tyrannical. This was the first time she had seen him so weak. It was really worrying. Boom, boom, boom. Tianlei was still falling one after another, and Taizu's aura was weakening at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chu Luiwei quickly glanced at Scarlet Heaven Sword. Only 1/3 of the runes on the scabbard had lit up. This couldn't go on. Chu Luiwei thought calmly. Looking at Taizu's current state, he definitely wouldn't be able to hold on until the end. Scarlet Heaven Sword was a venerable artifact. In order to refine the sword's soul into an artifact soul, the number of Tianlei needed was astonishing. It was indeed impossible to complete it with Taizu's strength alone. Chu Luiwei didn't want to disregard Taizu's life for this. "Taizu! Please stop triggering Tianlei immediately." Chu Luiwei quickly made a decision and shouted loudly. Of course, Taizu refused. What kind of treasure was a venerable artifact? It was a great opportunity for this girl to be lucky enough to obtain it. Many people wouldn't even be able to see it once in their lifetime, but she was so lucky to obtain it. How could he not cherish it? Even if he had to exhaust the last bit of his strength, he had to help her to the end. Then, Taizu calmed down, raised his chi, and flew up. In the gloomy sky, several more bolts of heavenly lightning appeared. The wind howled, and Taizu's figure seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Chu Luiwei watched from below, extremely nervous and distressed. She knew very well that Taizu was already close to his limit. If he didn't stop, the consequences would be unimaginable. This was not Taizu's remnant divine sense, but his true soul. If anything happened to him today, he would really be consigned to eternal damnation. Chu Luiwei's chest seemed to be burning with flames, and a trace of scarlet appeared in her eyes. "Taizu, please return." Taizu stood in midair, his body straight. He didn't look back. In the dark and dazzling world, he seemed to be alone. As time passed, Taizu's aura became weaker and weaker. Gradually, no more Tianlei appeared in the sky. Taizu's heart sank. According to his realm, even if he risked his life, he wouldn't be able to summon enough Tianlei. Boom. The last Tianlei struck. Taizu's face turned pale. He finally turned around and looked at Chu Luiyue. His expression was apologetic, and his lips trembled. It's Taizu's fault for being useless, Chu Luiyue shook her head. You've done your best. Luyu can't thank you enough. At this moment, only half of the patterns on Scarlet Heaven's sword lit up. Chu Luiyue closed her eyes. When he opened his eyes again, there seemed to be undercurrents and flames burning in his black jade-like eyes. She gripped Scarlet Heaven's sword tightly and immediately stood up. Most of her body had already been affected by that terrifying power, and she couldn't feel anything. At this moment, she was only relying on her last bit of willpower to hold Scarlet Heaven's sword tightly. Taizu let out a long sigh. Unfortunately, it's a waste of energy this time, Chu Luiyue said. Not necessarily. Taizu was stunned. What other ways do you have? Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and looked in a certain direction. There was a place that had plenty of places. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1242. Chu Luiyue looked up. Outside Jianghu Mountain, a faint golden barrier flickered quietly in the dark night. Her heart skipped a beat, and she turned to look at a certain place at the foot of the mountain. A tall figure was flying over at a high speed. It was Rong Xiu. He was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye he had arrived in front of her from afar. The two of them looked at each other. Chu Luiyue said, I'm going to Thousand Wine Mountain. Rong Xiu nodded slightly. I'll accompany you. There was no need for any explanation. With just a look, they could understand each other's intentions and thoughts. Chu Luiyue's heart warmed, and her pale lips curled up slightly. Aren't you going to ask me what I'm going to do? Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. That's not important. As long as you want to go, I'll go with you. As he spoke, his gaze swept across the Scarlet Heaven sword in Chu Luiyue's hand. Follow me. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his wrist, and the barrier on the mountain top suddenly rippled. Immediately, an exit opened. His figure moved, and he took the lead to charge out. Chu Luiyue followed closely behind. After the two of them left, the barrier quickly closed up, concealing everything silently. From the outside, it was as if nothing had happened. It was late at night, and the entire academy was silent. The two of them set off from Jianghu Mountain and went straight to Thousand Wine Mountain. Rong Xiu seemed to be very familiar with that place, and he almost didn't stop on the way. Because he was worried that the fluctuations of Scarlet Heaven Sword would attract attention, he deliberately set up a barrier around Chu Luiyue to completely conceal her aura. Just like that, the two of them successfully arrived at the foot of Thousand Wine Mountain. In the dark night, the barrier on Thousand Wine Mountain was almost invisible. From the outside, one could only see the undulating peaks and the shadows of the trees and forests. The surroundings were silent. However, Chu Luiyue's heart was beating rapidly. The Scarlet Heaven sword in her hand emitted a strange fluctuation. She lowered her head to take a look. The silver Tianlei that originally covered it had almost disappeared. As for the half of the golden veins that had been lit up with much difficulty, it also showed signs of fainting. This was because the amount of Tianlei he had summoned was too little, and he hadn't been able to completely refine the sword's soul into an artifact soul. That was why it was stuck in the middle, neither moving up nor down. If he couldn't make up for it in time, not only would this refinement fail, everything he had experienced before would be in vain. Therefore, he absolutely could not give up. Chu Luiyue looked up at the barrier in front of him. A vast pressure spread out from within. Ever since the incident with her, the Academy's elders seemed to have strengthened the barrier around the Thousand Wine Mountain. In her current state, it was impossible for her to break in. Fortunately, there was still Rong Xiu. He stood in front of the barrier and raised his hand. A few golden rays of light flew out and formed a strange profound formation in the air. That small golden profound formation lightly stuck onto the barrier. An entrance quickly appeared. Chu Luiyue couldn't hide her surprise as she looked at Rong Xiu. Seeing that his expression was normal and his eyes were calm, she finally couldn't help but ask. Rong Xiao, this isn't the first time you've done this, right? This technique, no matter how you look at it, it's so familiar. Rong Xiao's thin lips curled up slightly as he glanced at her with a faint smile. I learned it from you. Chu Luiwei, what did she do in the academy in the past? And from Rong Xiao's words, it seemed like she had led him astray. Go up, I'll tell you about this later. Or, just like the matter of the herb garden, she would unknowingly recall it. Rong Xiao said as he stepped into the barrier. Chu Luiwei took a deep breath and went in with her sword. After entering the barrier, Chu Luiwei's first reaction was to look up at the top of the mountain. As expected, there was a figure standing at the highest point of the mountain. Above the sky, dark clouds gathered as Tianlei flashed and struck down continuously. From the looks of it, he seemed to be refining weapons. Those Tianlei, some fell in front of him, while some fell into the spring. Even though they were separated by such a distance, Chu Luiwei could still feel the astonishing power contained in those Tianlei. She licked her pale and cracked lips. This was what she needed the most now. However, that person seemed to be an elder of the academy. It wouldn't be appropriate for her to barge in directly. However, just as Chu Luiwei was thinking hard about how to negotiate with that person, the Scarlet Heaven Sword in her hand suddenly flew out. Swoosh! The Scarlet Heaven Sword drew a faint golden line in the air. In the blink of an eye, it had already rushed to the top of the mountain. Chu Luiwei was shocked, and she immediately followed him without thinking. She had only pondered for a moment when the Scarlet Heaven Sword seized this opportunity and directly escaped from her hand. And it was heading straight for the top of the mountain. It was heading for the Tianlei. Chu Luiwei had already used her full speed, but no matter how powerful she was, could she be faster than a venerable artifact? Soon, under her shocked gaze, the Scarlet Heaven Sword rushed up. Those Tianlei seemed to have sensed something and suddenly turned around and slashed down at it. Boom, boom, boom. The sound shook the sky. Flames shot in all directions. Chu Luiwei was almost unable to open her eyes because of the dazzling light. She could only endure the pain and stare at it. The Tianlei that were supposed to fall were all intercepted by the Scarlet Heaven Sword halfway. Shang Yusen was originally focused on refining when he suddenly sensed an abnormal energy fluctuation. He suddenly looked in that direction, but he only saw something flash past. Then, several bolts of heavenly lightning exploded above his head. Boom! Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.